Hello, John. Thank you for coming back to the channel. I believe this is episode 16,
Yes.
and a lot has happened. This recording is going to be talking a bit about Trump, and you
Mm,
also said that you wanted to talk a little bit about Germany too,
yeah.
and whatever else you wanted to talk about. You did remind me, and maybe we don't have time today to do it, but you reminded me to for our next show to talk about there was some sort of asteroid or some sort of
Oh, the
comet
Waba's
that was
Comet?
coming in. Yeah,
The
the comet
comet?
that was coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't
Comet.
know
Yeah.
if we have any time to talk about that, but you
Well,
did
well,
ask
we'll
me to
see,
remind
how
you.
it kind of goes. It flows where it goes. I don't even
Right,
know how I'm going to sequence things. It just starts pouring
right,
out of me. So,
right.
but certainly the first thing to talk about is what happened
Let,
yesterday.
right.
The
Let me
13th.
just remind the audience, please click the link in the description of this video and all the videos I've been doing with John. And that will take you to his website. You'll be able to sign up for his periodical. You'll be able to also do a reading. You can sign up for a reading. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the video, but please click the link, go to his website, and sign up for the periodical. So, as of this recording, yesterday, um, there was an attempted assassination on Trump. Um, it was really strange. Let me just before you go off on your tangent. Let me just briefly. Yesterday was the anniversary of my brother's passing,
Oh,
and
wow.
it was the 14th year.
Oh my
So
God.
he passed away. He passed away in 2010, and
Wow.
so it's 2024. So it's 14 years ago, and it was kind of shocking to kind of be watching this event taking place, and also be in that kind of mourning
Mm,
day. It was just it was kind of surreal.
mm.
That was my perspective on this. But all right, let's start with Trump. I mean, what are you seeing? What's your perspective on this?
Well, probably everybody is. If you're watching shows like this, most of you are watching other shows that are part of the alternative media where you'll get a very different take on things um, than you will the mainstream media. Um, there's so many things. I think I'll start by going back to actually September 2020 when I was releasing the first of two serializations for my readers on HogueProphecy.com of what I had to write about the astrology and the of the candidates, both presidents and vice presidents, who were two of the four were going to be elected in a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Yes, Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which is also known as the Curse of Tecumseh conjunction. Happens every 20 years. It's rare that way. It's generational. And so what I was writing then, I'm currently writing an article which will be out in a new wave of Hogue Prophecy reports in about 3 days, where I'm kind of getting it all down, as well as writing about some very important things regarding to the conflicts that are happening, um, which is what the Germany issue will also, and in some ways, that's more ominous than what happened yesterday, although it's connected. Um, the Curse of Tecumseh is this thing we have in America where for from 1840 uh, up to the last election, we have seen the evolution of a certain affliction that happens. The story is that Tecumseh was this a Native American warrior, and his older brother, was the shaman of the uh, alliance of the Great Lakes Native Americans against the colonization, the overcrowding of white people overcrowding their range. And so they had a war, and there was a big battle. I think it was called Tippecanoe, and the general that led it was the later became the kind of president of the Ohio, I believe the Ohio, might have been Indiana. I'm sorry, folks, if I get that wrong, but the Ohio um, province, or not yet a state, not the right word for it, but anyway, he uh, later became, well, what happened is when the prophet heard that his brother, beloved brother, his great hero, was shot, killed in the rout of the Native Americans at Tippecanoe, um, he said, I tell you, Harrison will die, I tell you, and he will be, in every generation, a white chief will die of the white lands, something of that ilk. So decades go by. That was in the, I think, in the 1820s, maybe later. But anyway, he's an older man then. He became president, and it was a driving rain. I think it was in April or March when they used to do the inauguration day back then, and and everybody had their beaver hats on except him, so that everybody could see where he was, because no TV in those days. So, and his thick shock of gray hair. And so he made his speech in the driving cold rain, caught a cold, and within less than, or around 1 month of being president, died in office. Now, Jupiter-Saturn conjunction had happened under that election in 1840. So in early 1841, March, he died. So anybody who knew the curse were going, is that just a coincidence? Did that mad shaman get his way? Well, if the curse is supposed to be, there's another side to this which has nothing to do with curses. It has something to do with the insensitivity of people to cosmic forces that they kind of get. I mean, we're already suffering from the fact that, especially in the West, that we're so disconnected from nature that we can't really see how things are changing. We don't have a native person's memory. I mean, if you really want to ask people if there's climate change going on, just ask the native peoples of Alaska, of the great bands of Canada. Just ask the Maori in New Zealand. Just ask the people who are very in tune with nature. Their memory of oral memory goes back thousands of years, and they don't have short-term memory problems like we do. And they have a memory of how things were. Now, because of studying them early on in my life, I try to resume or reconnect with the sensitivity of nature, um, so that I can recall things that changed over. Now my life is approaching, in October, I will begin to live through my 70th year. Officially, it's the next year. They call me 70, but then I'm starting my 71st year. But really, this year is lived in a few more months, by October 29th, right around the election. Now, so what then happened is, Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in Sumerian times, when people were in tune with the cycles of life, you never picked a king or a government during the time of a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. These were times to atone, times to meditate, times to wait, regenerate, and be renewed. Jupiter's expansion planet. Saturn is a reality giver, and sometimes the realities don't match our dreams. And if you're like most people are with their Saturn position, they call Saturn a dark, grim reaper. But that is very unfair to Saturn, and it's very reflective of how much our programming each life makes us resist the truth and try to live through our dreams, which always become nightmares. Saturn tells you that. It's not a limiter. It limits delusion, not truth, not reality. If you want to live in your delusions, you will hate Saturn. That's the Grim Reaper. If you love truth and want to see things as they are and be with that, Saturn is your fastest friend in the astrology planets. And, I'm speaking from personal experience because I have Saturn at a very strong part in my chart. It's in Scorpio, conjunct my Venus and Saturn and ascendant in Scorpio 12th house, with 5 degrees Sun in Scorpio 12th house. So I'm a double Scorpio 12th house. person. 12th house rules hidden enemies, the subconscious, and the mass message to all of us from the depths of the unconscious, superconscious, all the way to that through that dark tunnel to the conscious, the superconscious. So it's an oceanic place, and it's a place where you can drown or you learn how to swim with change. So it is not the time to elect a president. And so, but it is a strange thing. And if you ask me why this curse works, I don't know. I just report on this unusual thing that happened, starting with Harrison. 20 years later, 840s, a man was elected in 1860. 20 years later, Abraham Lincoln to become president of the United States, another white chief of another generation. He did not die in his first term, but he was assassinated in his second. So the curse kind of shows that it doesn't matter how many terms, if you are elected, if you do a second term, you're gone. So 20 years later, Garfield is shot by an anarchist and he dies from complications of the operation. Even his assassin said, I didn't kill him, I shot him. The doctors killed him. You know, he had quack doctors. Well, that Italian iconoclast was a character. I can't remember his name, but he was an Italian American. And okay, now you go 20 years after that, McKinley. He is also shot by an anarchist, point blank in the stomach, and 1900, and he dies. Then go 20 years after that, and I think we're looking at, oh, what's his name? It would be the one in the 1920s after Wilson.
Is that Taft? That's not, is that Taft?
No,
No.
Taft. It's after Taft and Wilson. Um, it would be oh,
Hoover.
no,
Right, no.
it's not Coolidge.
Co
Coolidge came after him. Hoover, and I can't remember his name. Sorry, everybody, but um, he um, he died of Harding. It's Harding. I always remember because he died of
Harding.
Harding from the arteries, and I love puns.
Okay.
Yes, Harding. And so 20 years after him, Roosevelt was elected, 1932, I think. And so he did the unprecedented thing of being elected 3 times. So he survived his first and second term. And maybe some people were saying, well, maybe he's missed the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction curse. But he died of an aneurysm in his unprecedented opening of the fourth term. Or third term, I guess. He's 3 terms. Let's see, he did. Oh, it was not. No, here's what it was. He was elected in 1940 for a third term. So he beat it in the first. Let's see, 32. Yeah, 36 was his second term. He went for an unprecedented third term in 1940 because he saw World War II coming, and I would frankly say he was right to make the assessment that he was the only leader who would be able to lead America through that, and especially in America that at that time was completely isolationist, although Pearl Harbor ended that in 24 hours. But it was a good, he had a good prescience of that. So he did a third term and then was elected to a fourth term. So of course he died in the fourth term. So that's oddly enough would be the second term. So there's a pattern again, even though it's a little farther ahead. And so this pattern is bedeviling us. And then what happens after 1940, 1960? We all pretty much know what happened 3 years into that first term. John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Go 20 years into the future, and we have Ronald Reagan. Now, up to this point, all of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions had happened in in earth and water and fire elements, but not air. This one was, so that's a softer influence in astro speak. So Ronald Reagan there was an assassination attempt, early in his first term. And because he was physically so healthy, the doctors didn't realize how close he was out to bleeding out internally. And so he almost died. It really was close when the bullet that hit him under here and then broke a rib and lodged next to his heart. He suddenly realizing that he's acting good, but then he fainted, and it was like, oh man, he's not good at all. He's dying. And so he just made it very close call. And so now we have an interesting change in the curse. The president survived, and he went on to do 2 terms, and he didn't die. But it gave hope to some of us. By that time, I was engaged in watching this curse and this astrological aspect interplay with each other. So the next 20 years would be 2000. And so what would happen with the Bush Jr. and Al Gore election? Well, they both survived, but the curse is starting to change. It was less about the chief dying every 20 years and started to be about the death of democracy, taking big steps every 20 years. So that's what I started writing about. I said, it was a lot of people were pissed off at me when I said it, but I said on Coast and others that, Al Gore won, and he was cheated of his election. And fortunately, back then, a year later, because I predict, since 1968, I've been predicting the popular vote and giving the percentage since Nixon and Humphrey in 1968. And at this point, I'm 14-0. So we're entering the 15th round of whether it doesn't work or not. So I've had quite a prophetic run on this. And what happens here is that I started to write about how, that Gore had won, and people were just freaking, oh no, it's just because you're a Democrat. No, I'm not a Democrat or Republican. And so there was a lot of that. But I got lucky because a year after it, all those hanging chads that everybody was looking at, trying to recount the several Democratic dominant areas of around Miami and that area of Florida, the Florida recount. A group of people went to recount those votes, and they were all packed in the capital of the state of Florida in a warehouse, and they got counted. And to clear things up, the person who really lost his own election was Al Gore, choking at the pressure when the Supreme Court said, no, you got to take it back to the Florida State Supreme Court. And actually, now that I've sussed it out and researched it, the court was right to do that, Supreme Court, because they were not given what are the kind of rules of recount are you going to present. So Gore's people didn't even present that. And they were right to send it back to the Supreme Court of the state of Florida. But that's when Al Gore choked and gave up. But if he had not, he would have been president, because a year later, what they did is do the thing. So the Supreme Court of Florida never got a chance to look at this, and they never got a chance to ask the questions. How are you going to do? Are you going to do it this way, or that way? Are you going to count the whole state or just these people? And so this group of counters did the 3 possible recount ways that you could do it. And they counted every ballot all across, because I've been telling people then, I said, it's not these Democrat things that you need to recount. You need to recount the whole state. And I remember there was one Republican leader who suddenly came out and said, well, why don't they ask us to do the whole state? And he was like, shh, shh, shh. get away, they were like pushing him down, and he just disappeared from the thing. And I saw that. I said, whoa, wait a minute, what's that? Some leader of the Republican Party. And they never got on radio and TV again. He was just like, no, no, don't. And um, so they did recount the whole thing. And in all three styles of counting, Al Gore won. Sometimes by 75 votes, 20, or I think 30 for the three ways, but he won. There were more people voting for him, not many, but then Bush. So I fortunately then was able to objectively prove my ballot count, ratio. 20 years ahead of the time, I'm thinking it's going to be impossible, because I started to say about the 2020 election that I said, I fear that we're entering what will be considered, in a way, the last election America holds. And George Noory of Coast to Coast, it was like a riddle I was given as a message. It's prophecy. Everybody presumes that the person who was a messenger knows what the riddle means. It just was there. It was just like, and I said, I don't really know what it means, but it doesn't sound good for the credibility of any election after 2020. And so I started writing about it in September of 2020, and for my 2020 predictions ebook, which is still available. And I was just seeing that this recount's going to go bad. There's going to be fraud in the system. What I now realize is that it may very well be what we entered the last election that we believed would be a real election. And now the system's broken. It's corrupt. Um, you can't have more people voting in 2020 than are registered as voters. Millions more voted that were not registered. I mean, that's the one. No, but it's like the guy in Florida. Hey, what about it? The news, the people who profited from this on both sides of the deep state do not want anybody talking about the fact that you have too many votes for the amount who are registered. Case closed. Something's wrong here. So even the people that are trying to work this out as a fraud seems to overlook that. But anyway, the only way I'm going to be able to count that, of course, is no longer there, because the system's botched, the system's perverted. It's not. So I may say what the percentage is. I mean, I think my prediction was Trump was going to win another electoral vote. And I still think that's what happened, because I can't explain how, but I just kind of feel the people. It's an empathic thing. I feel the number. And what I was feeling was confusion. No number clearly done. A farce. A lie. And that was my message. This one I can't count. The only way that I'm going to have some kind of vindication, which is really out there, I've been collecting the evidence since for my special on the election for this 4-year cycle, is that the way the courts just threw out a lot of court cases that were really showing all kinds of shenanigans going on. If those cases are looked at a second time with an independent group, just like the people who went into the warehouse and counted the ballots, those I mean, there was a lot of grift going on with, people were just trying to suppress it. Nobody was, and the other problem was that Trump's people really did a bad thing. Giuliani did a terrible job. I mean, even I know this, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a Supreme Court lawyer, but even I know this, that you don't give a messed up election crying over spilled milk of things not being clear to the Supreme Court a month after the election. what they should have done is scream bloody murder when the whole idea in September of 2020 was, because of COVID, we've got to get everybody on ballots and mail-in ballots. And the fact that they just let that go and decided to deal with it when it all screwed up. Well, I mean, even Giuliani doesn't seem to understand the Supreme Court, that you don't do that to the Supreme Court. They can't. Their answer is going to be, we're not going to judge it because you're making us, one of the three tiers of the government, have to clean up your own mess. And they're right to say that, even though I wish something had happened. But if they had done the proceedings to say that, okay, you're going ahead with these ballots, but we're making the point all across 50 states that these ballots we claim are going to end up being fraudulent and unable to be counted. If you started in September with those court cases, by the time the election happened, you could have actually gotten the movement of taking the case to a place where the Supreme Court would rule on it before 9th January. And then before that, that would have brought into question something that happened, I think, in 1888, where the House of Representatives had to basically tell the Electoral College people that were picked, who were the real people that vote in per state, not us. We vote for electors. There's no such thing as Americans voting for president. We vote for the electors of our state to convene in the Capitol and in our name vote the majorities of our states to get the right number, and that's how the president's elected in law. So, and it has a lot to, I was against the Electoral College for many decades, but I finally understand why we've got it, because unlike most countries, our states are really quasi-sovereign nations, much more than you'll find anywhere else. If you want an example somewhere else where that's true, go to Germany. Bavaria has different rules. It doesn't follow the rules of the rest of German states, because to become part of the German Empire, they got that concession. Otherwise, they would have remained independent of the German Empire in 1871, that is, during the Franco-Prussian War, when the German Empire was created. So, so you know, I get the idea. That's a whole other subject we can talk about in another, when the election's closer, about electoral college, because it's certainly going to come up again. But what happened in 1888, I think it was Tilson versus Harrison, I believe. They actually had to disqualify electors, and if that happens again, then the electors have to, then the Congress, the House of Representatives, will then vote for the president, and the Senate will vote for the vice president. And that, as I understand it, that's what I've been saying already. I'll go back and cooperate it with this articles that I'm putting together, but I've been on coast saying that I wouldn't be surprised if we actually have to see that again. That hasn't been done since 1888 with Tilden and Harrison, or whoever it was, the two that had the dispute. They had Electoral College had to redo itself. Now they were trying on the 9th of January 6th to I mean, Trump wanted that to happen, that the vice president would declare that a lot of these electoral votes are not accurate because of the counting. But again, should have started that in September. And the vice president was correct not to follow through with that. So now we have the intrigue of so what did 2020 do? Well, I have never seen more biblically reckoning levels of astrology in my lifetime. I've never seen such convergence of Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was right overhead on the real birthday of any 4-year presidential term, which is at noon, January 20th. There were things that were going on there. I mean, I was writing reams and reams of things about it, because I've just never seen it, as somebody who does judicial astrology, and thankfully, because we have now computers that can go tens of thousands of years back and forth, I'm able to really check out Nostradamus's astrology and back in 1550s and look at the patterns that a judicial or political astrologer, as we call it now, does to plot courses of the futures of nations, religions, leadership, to get an idea of where countries are going, where the world is going. And this year, I've already said, I wrote in my special for looking at the entire year of 2024, I call it a year of reckoning, a year unique, a year in which by the summer we may reckon or not whether we exist or not as a civilization. At the same time, upwelling from this is a huge boiling of the people around the world are getting sick and tired of elites acting like aristocrats, not listening to the needs of the people, squandering the people's treasures on wars that are really going nowhere. It's not the first time this has happened. The Ancien Regime, the French regime, Louis XVI, Louis XV, bankrupted France, fighting wars with Britain over colonial empire dominance. And, you know, the American Revolution was part of that. Went on for years, endless wars. And there then happened a point, which frankly, I think this very day, Bastille Day, this Sunday, is the moment when the French Revolution was born by the storming of an old prison at the edge of Paris at that time. And that triggered the French Revolution, which the American Revolution was the dream architecturally put in blueprint. But the French Revolution, for all its faults, was the accelerant, the catalyst for a century of revolutions that followed. Even Napoleon saw that when he was wasting away in St. Helena in his final exile, writing his memoirs. I was shocked when I read his memoirs to see to what extent he was a prophetic man, prescient, very prescient. He described exactly, he said, well, because, you know, he always thought that he saved the French Revolution from its chaos by being an ordered emperor of revolution, if you like. You know, even though he was a tyrant, and you know, he would be the first modern fascist in fascist Roman Caesar in modern times. Fascist comes from the term fascia, which is the axe with the twigs wrapped around it, which is the symbol of the Roman Senate and later the Roman dictatorship. So it was Mussolini who resurrected the fascia to be the symbol with the hatchets on it of what he was going to do as a neo-Rome, fascist Rome. So we get the word fascist from fascia, but it's just symbol of the power of the Senate. It can be in democracy or it can be as the dictators did. You know, the problem with Rome was that when it was a republic, and it was a republic for like a half a millennium, it was a long time, but when Rome got big and when Rome became an empire, it had to make a decision the British had to make when they decided not to preserve their empire, but drop it. The only way you can preserve an empire is through fascism and totalitarianism. You can't, democracies are best when they are local. That's why it'll be very important in the future that there's more local power going back to the states for them, because people meet. Democracy is about the people meeting. But if you've got some big empire, you're going to need Caesars and Hitlers and Stalins, which has got some problems. So I'm looking at 2020 and I'm seeing these stars, and I'm looking at Trump and what I saw. And I mean, I redid his chart and I looked at his incredible luck, which we saw yesterday. He has one of the most powerful North Node luck conjunctions I've ever seen in a human being. So if anybody could survive attempts of assassination, I don't think this is the only one coming. He might survive them. One of his luckiest things that happened, his whole salesman snake oil thing about how he had a big boom economically going on was a bubble that was about to pop. But he was like, he was lucky that he lost because the bubble popped on Biden's watch when Biden popped it with another 2 trillion, thinking that he can put 2 trillion into the dollar system and spend his way out of a bubble popping. Well, it popped. We've been in a great recession ever since in the early part of his presidency. So Donald got away with it because, he's astrologically the Teflon astrology symbol. He's his true north saved him again. His true north saved him yesterday. He was looking to the side because it was a strange layout in western Pennsylvania where this was happening, west of Pittsburgh, and he had these two bunches of people on either side. So he's turning side to side to talk with each side, and he literally, in 1 second, the way he turned his head, if his head was this way and it went past his ear, but the moments before his head was like that, it would have passed through this lobe and killed him. It would have blown his back of his head off. But literally by a quarter of an inch, you could see where it nicked him. There's a little line at the top point where his ear meets his head. So it nicked him right there. We'll get to that. There's lots of conundrums to deal with what happened yesterday. So, my feeling was that America was descending into the ultimate civil war. That we would have a broken system. The system constitution wouldn't be respected. That this would be the beginning of our version of the Russian time of troubles. It would also see the collapse of America as an empire through its dollar being not used anymore. Well, that's all happening, and it will be very fast. And so it's going to be a time of tribulation. 2024 is a tribulation year, and it's not what I want, not what most people want, but there it is. There it is. There comes a time when certain strains that people are doing in their habits reaches a breaking point, and we've reached it. And on top of that, not only we're dealing with the potential of a crisis of leadership. I mean, I've been saying since 2017 that Joe Biden has dementia. I've been saying to millions of people on shows, and it's like, well, no, when I look at Joe, he looks fine. I'm looking at him right now, and he's absolutely fine. Well, the palms were knocked off during the debate. Now, just before the debate, I was writing, and in my last Hogue prophecy report, I said, I think we're going to see a political assassination of Biden by CNN. I could see the powers that be in the Democratic, the wing of the deep state that leans Democratic, the blue storefront of the Uni Party, the red storefront over here, the Republican face, and there's the Democratic face. I have to say Democrat face because I don't see the Democrats practicing democracy. And unfortunately, they give that it. So I have to, this is why I say Democrat, not because I'm a GOP guy. I'm not. It's because I will call the Democratic Party when they practice democracy. And otherwise I call the Republicans the Dumbo publicans, the elephant Dumbo, because a lot of the Republicans are in the same political grift that the leaders of the Democratic Party are. So, you can't. The decision has happened that the people will want to, God, where to go with this? It's so twisted. But just a moment. There's a lot of noise outside. I'm going to close my window here, even though it's hot. Um, Joe Biden was politically assassinated from the beginning of this month. So we've had two assassinations already this month. One's political. Biden was they wanted to make sure, and like magic, suddenly CNN, which has always been protecting him, and all these different groups on the left and in the mainstream news were always protecting him. Suddenly, magically, they weren't protecting him after all these years. Since 2017, they were not protecting him, and then suddenly people got to see. This is very much a common factor in this year of reckoning. Masks are slipping off, and sometimes in good ways. For instance, it depends on what side you're on, but if you've been buying all this myth of Putin being some little evil house elf like Dobby gone dark side, running as a dictator of Russia, you only have to, and if you haven't seen it, I dare you watch it. Um, Let Saturn show you the way to certain things of truth. When Tucker Carlson, fortunately not well rehearsed, he came in like a naive American, which some people have criticized him for, but I think that was the best way for him, the babe in the wood American who, like everybody who comes from a Western background, has absolutely no understanding since 1242 AD when they started invading Russia, how Russia and Russians really are. And so he comes, sits down with Vladimir Putin. Because of his innocence, Putin later said, "Boy, he's dangerous, this guy," and he meant it in a positive way. As a judo master, he was saying he's offsetting me. It doesn't often happen, but people got to see the Vladimir Putin that I have been studying and watching since 20 years. And a lot of people that have talked to me afterwards said, well, because those 2 hours you were actually seeing a real rational man who's just the head of the board of the Security Council, which actually governs Russia. He doesn't govern whatever comes out of his head. It's not like, okay, okay. It's not like that. And the Russian system, and I've watched them, there's actually 20 people who are the main leaders who in committee decide, and then they sometimes tell their president, no, we're not going to do that. It's a hell of a lot more democratic than our country right now, but you'd never know that if you only watch the mainstream news. And the so Biden was it was amazing how all the money lenders and all the people started to go against him, and it's still quite likely that he may not make it to the convention later in August. I mean, I've already kind of put out a forecast that I really don't see him being elected in end of August. And that was a month or two ago. And now, it's developing. Now, if I'm wrong, if the Democratic Party is going to try to, well, I can tell you that the only person they can really front, um, it's not going to be Gavin Newsom, American Psycho. The way he's got those, I really like you. you know? His teeth are a lot straighter than mine. I'll grant him that. But he reminds me of Christian Bale playing American Psycho. Sometimes as a joke, I have a shot of Gavin Newsom and he's like doing his, and then I have Christian Bale doing the same, looking over and I'm going, an American Psycho. Um, so sometimes well, you see, I'm a double Scorpio. My humor shows my Saturnian side with stuff. Um, so anyway, I don't think he's going to run, and it puts back into the situation. I'm going to be writing about this in my next, at the end of this month. I'm going to do the astrological assessment of Kamala Harris because I was surprised when I did her astrology. I was surprised how much I was trying to find a way for her to listen to the lighter angels of her nature, astrological nature. I didn't come in with biases. I just, well, how does this thing work out? And it's a question of maturity. What I did, there wasn't possibility that, sometimes people are immature for most of their lives. But there are rare occasions when the very shock of being given power, most of the time if an immature person is given power, they're worse. And that's more likely what's going to happen with Kamala. She doesn't have the excuse of having a dementia. She's just uh, showing herself to be a very immature mediocrity. Um, what if, and there are some potentials, although they're a bit slim, but sometimes slim potentials happen in astrology, that the shock of the weight of being president is going to grow her up in a moment. And the other thing I saw was she personally, as a president, will never send us to World War III if she's a leader and not being led. Because it felt very strong to me that she does not want to see her daughters and her family die in a nuclear war. She has that feminine wisdom in her. She has a lot of feminine wisdom in her, but it hasn't come out yet. Maybe the shock of being president might surprise us. But then again, here's the other obstacle. If she is president, she triggers the number 47 in Kabbalah. It's called many things. Its more gruesome thing is dead man walking. It's a leader or a person who is leading, but nobody listens to them, and the whole cabinet is just going, oh yeah, yeah. Thank you, Kamala. Now what were you saying? That, and the problem is that she's probably going to be told that the way this works out, the deal is that you can't change the cabinet. To keep the same thing going, you have to keep Biden's agenda going, which is their agenda, because Biden's just going, where's my ice cream? And so, the people that are really running our country are Jake Sullivan. He's pretending to be the foreign policy president channel. And then you have Anthony Blinken, who is trying to, and some other people are trying to do that too, the foreign policy and the domestic. But it's his cabinet that's running things. And I wouldn't be surprised if Victoria Nuland, even though she's off in Columbia University now, is still having her clandestine phone conversations, changing things, giving advice, because like she infamously did when she's responsible actually for the second Cold War starting in 2014, when America under Obama decided to decided to have hand-picked people, that Nuland and Priyat, the American ambassador of Ukraine, pick what was a who's who of Banderite fascist Nazis to run a government after Yanukovych, who was democratically elected, and Ukraine was overthrown violently by Pratley sector, which means right sector. That's the guys with the red and black tricolor of Ukraine. Black is the black soil, and the red in the sky is the blood of the pure Aryan Ukrainians. It's another stiff-armed bunch. They were Hitler's best non-German auxiliaries. They were most of the men who pushed the buttons on the nuts and bolts of the death camps. These Banderites, the OUN, and they're in power since 2014, and it's worked better for them when Poroshenko was elected out of office and replaced by a Jewish frontman, so that people who don't really go deep into things will say, how can this be fascist when they have a Jewish president? What you don't have a Jewish president, you have an actor, a stand-up comedian, kind of funny in a vulgar way. I mean, I've watched some of his stuff. But he's an actor. He's pretending to be president. His deputy is the guy that's running the show. And in the shadows are Right Sector and Adar and Kraken and Azov, all the fascist militias, SS of this government. And that has been suppressed like so many things are, like Biden's dementia problem has been. And in this year, these things hatch out. Um, so so everything was rearranged so that basically democracy hasn't existed in Ukraine since 2014, just in name only. I mean, when Zelensky was elected, he promised to solve the problems, talk to Putin, make peace with the 40% of Ukraine which is Russian. And when he got in power, the big thugs that were really running the thing said, "Listen, you little Jew man, sit here. We're going to tell you what you're going to do, and if you don't, we'll hang you on one of the street lamps, like we used to." And and so you're going to banish all opposition parties. You're going to put their leaders in jail. You're going to pull the plug on all opposition news in Ukraine. There's only going to be our our Banderite channels that you will support. And we're going to continue to try to become a member of NATO. If we're not already a member of NATO, we are de facto members because for the next 8 years, NATO did everything they could to train Ukraine up to standard to NATO. And in a way, the Ukrainian army of 600,000 men was the largest army in NATO de facto. But so these things are interconnected. Biden has completely invested his future and the American future into his Ukrainian project because of personal graft, using his son as a go-between. I was writing about that in 2014 in my articles. And then years later, people caught up with the reality. Too bad. I wish they'd caught up with it then. It might not be so difficult to extricate ourselves. But, these are the people that, so there's no there's no way the curse of Tecumseh, is really doing a number. And I said in the curse of Tecumseh, my concern was whether it was Trump or Biden elected in 2020, neither of them would see them finish their first term in office. Now we'll see. Frankly, Biden's lasted a whole lot longer than I ever thought he would last. But now we'll see. Now we'll see if they will actually use him as the keep everybody looking at the puppet while we're doing all this stuff over here. And I don't know if that's going to work a lot. I mean, Obama was the kingmaker who made him, and Obama behind the scenes is very much trying to break him. And the money, he's lost the money, he's lost the press. People are trying to keep it. But what's really a problem for the Democratic Party is they really need to rally around Kamala Harris. They'll probably lose as badly with her as they did with Biden because these polls are dropping. I mean, the emperor's naked. We had in this 2024 one of its many moments where, oh, look at the emperor's new clothes. Aren't those wonderful? Oh, and don't say he's naked because if you do, the guy who designed these clothes for him and got out of our kingdom as fast as possible, he told the emperor that, oh, and there's only one problem. If you're not your father's child, people will not see these magic clothes and you'll be standing there naked. So, everybody, the men, the women, they're all going, oh, look at I can't see any clothes. I'm a bastard, and so I mean, very clever fellow, except for the child who was straddling his father's neck and shoulders to see over the crowds, and he went, "Hey, look, the emperor's naked." And that's kind of the moral of that story is like, we were all playing that Biden, the Emperor Biden had a new brain. Oh, what a wonderful brain it is. And Emperor Biden had his new brain. And when it died, we were all, oh, it's even, oh, man, it's so wonderful, his brain, his thoughts. His stutters have such a rhythm that keeps one's attention. His anyway, and now, well, they turned on him, and now the press was not protecting him anymore because the media has gone against him. And so, but they're finding out that Newsom, if he's the choice, um, I can see Trump says, "Oh yeah, you're the your choice. So what are you going to do? You're going to destroy the United States like you destroyed California? I mean, are you had like 10 million people leave California. It's losing population. People are leaving like droves. I mean, what do you say about that? I mean, you've ruined California, our biggest state, our most important state, and now you want to go up and ruin the whole country, and by God, he's got such a bad record. I mean, if you interview anybody in California, none of them like him very much. He was almost impeached. Talk about impeachments, Trump will say, well, what about you? You were almost impeached, Gavin Gruesome. So that's not going to fly. And Kamala Harris is number 47 vibratory leader, which means that she's just almost a non-entity, vacuous woman walking, talking, demanding, ordering, everybody's ignoring her in the room and just going on with their business. It might be even worse than the way it was with Biden. So the danger now is it's very likely that Trump will win. In fact, I was saying more and more, and actually on the third, I have a letter in this new article where I talk about it, where I was talking to one of my readers about it, and oftentimes I get inspired by my readers when they write me. So I love it when you all write me because you inspire me to answer your letters, and it becomes whole articles. Um, and I'm also like answering what you want to know about the future. And so I was saying to him, I said, look, and it's kind of the opening of my title for the opening article is Trump will win, but the question is, will they let him be president? So my feeling is that Trump's going to win. Trump will get the votes to win. He will probably get the votes to win the electoral and the popular vote. But will they let him? Will you get a real count from a system that is completely corrupt and basically stuffed the ballots of the last election 4 years ago? And here's something worse. It was when people could kind of trying so hard to see Biden this way and see him as possibly, or hear him, or not tell people what like the 3 months do, or the dog, that that
All right.
um, that you could still kind of believe that maybe Biden did win, maybe. But if they pull that again and if Biden's even still running, it'll stink so high to heaven of being a fraud that's going to send us into a civil war. I mean, no one, even the people saying, "Oh, you see, yeah, he won. Who could have thought?" Hmm. With what happened with all the suppressing and all the stuff suppressing of the court and stuff, that dog ain't gonna hunt. And then we really have a problem in our country. Now, another factor to factor into this, which doesn't work so well for the Democrats, also is Bobby Kennedy Jr. And I hope, after what happened yesterday, that the Biden administration is shamed to give his president his election campaign Secret Service protection. They deny him it. And guess what? I've corroborated the fact of this. Well, probably one of the reasons why we get now to what happened yesterday. They were understaffed, the Secret Service. And why? Because Biden lessened Trump's protection. So, and of course, I think it's a lame excuse because I still think it's maybe a little less people, but I'm think there was a lot of incompetence in the Secret Service right now. I mean, let me set up the situation. We had yesterday. Um, I used to work in security. I'm no Secret Service agent, but there's basic things you do. I mean, I used to do security for Osho and for my people in Rajneeshpuram in Oregon commune. And I did it in India as well as being as a night watchman and guarding his compound as one of the people. And so I have a background, unusual background in security. And so even basic things, that the place where the sniper positioned himself. By the way, there were a dozen people and they're on video. And in my article, I back everything up with the videos that people took. Now there's many more of them. And there was a group of people. The BBC interviewed a one guy with kind of real wild red hair under his MAGA hat, but and red beard, and he was a very lively guy, and he was saying that we couldn't go in, so we were going to be in the grass near the compound, where we could listen to him if we couldn't see him. So they're all hanging out there in the neighboring grounds of something. I don't remember what the business was. And they see this guy walking across the grass with a gun, a rifle. He's walking just right past them. He gets on the ladder, climbs up, and goes and bear crawls up to the apex of the roof. And what's over that roof? 135 meters away, a very close shot, is President Trump at the podium. And you will hear in the links that I have, you will hear it's towards the end before you'll see him on the roof and the person's kind of jiggling the phone a lot. But what's important is to listen to these people. This is like many minutes into them yelling at the police, pointing at the person on the roof, saying, "He's got a gun, he's got a gun." And now it's towards the end of it when the firing starts, because now they're raging. He says, "You goddamn bastard, he's got a gun. What the hell are you up there?" So they were getting really upset because um uh, and screaming. Women were shrieking at the Secret Service. "What the hell are you doing standing there? Get that guy. He's like getting ready." And now you cut to the other side of it where you see pictures behind Trump to his right, a little off from him is another roof, and on that roof you'll see two snipers, Secret Service snipers with heavy duty firearms at position. Now, what's coming up? It's even getting worse. The more, I mean, some of my good sources are like Larry Johnson, former CIA guy, very good, and he's also a person who trains people in firearms as his retirement job after being the CIA. And also Colonel Douglas McGregor, another really great source for a lot of military and things like this. And I just saw his report just before I came on our show here, and he was talking about these guys were on position way. It looked, long story short, there was a period when all the people were yelling, "Get this guy, he's crawling up there." And apparently a cop, this is what the Associated Press said, that a policeman did notice all the shrieking, and rather than just look at why are all those people, why are all those people yelling at us and pointing at us to look at something, that's what it felt like to the people there. And you'll see that people are interviewed later on. They're talking about that when it's still fresh. Anyway, apparently one of the cops tried to climb up the ladder that Crooks, ironic name for our Thomas Crooks, I think. Um, and he peeked over it, and Crooks pointed the gun at him, and he ducked down and ran off. So I guess from there he had gone to someone else. But um, it's important in that video to not. It's kind of hard to watch because it gets still, and you can see him on the top of the roof, and then they're freaking out, and it's all going all over the place. But the sounds are very important because you will if you watch the way Trump turned and you hear the poop poop poop, That was the lower sound of the gun by Crooks. And, poop, poop, and they went for his ear, Trump in reaction. And then Trump immediately dove to the ground. And even before the Secret Service were diving to the ground, he ducked, probably still alive because of that. And what you'll then hear after the poof, 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 maybe a fourth one in the din of things, then you hear a pop, 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 five. They're thinner tone, they're farther away. I think those were the guys with the guns. But here's the thing that's really either this is mediocrity par excellence. They waited 42 seconds and they only fired back when this guy unloaded on Trump. Then they fired back and put 5 bullets into his head. I've also
Why do you think that was? Do you think that they had to get permission to
well,
fire?
they do have to get permission to take a shot, but so it's possible that the Secret Service is so screwed up and so not is a shadow of what it used to be, that some idiot leader or these people couldn't fire until they got the order, and this guy, uh, for whatever reason, let 42 seconds go by, and then. So I don't know if that's a breakdown, or it certainly, with the American history of what has happened in the assassination of Kennedy in 1963 and stuff. There's reputations of evil involved in these things, and you got to also wonder this. I haven't seen such hatred thrown at a candidate for president than what I saw in Israel with Yitzhak Rabin and Netanyahu's party then, not Irgun anymore, but Likud. And I mean, we've talked about before that the things that the extreme right nationalists, Zionists were doing, and they're saying, let's hang him, let's kill him, and then what does Joe Biden do 5 days before? I mean, I watched his Detroit speech. I'm probably going to link it. I've seen him do a lot of really angry, I don't know what they juice him up with, but it makes him lively, but it makes him like pathologically angry, like that unbelievable red and blue monstrosity lit up Gothic, 2 soldiers guarding the Liberty Hall in Philadelphia, where he's up there with his podium all blood red, and the whole Liberty Hall is all blood red with blue windows. And it's like, and then he did a speech that he basically called anybody who voted against him for Trump as traitor. And that these people, he see like the whole group of anybody who voted for Trump were considered traitors and outcasts. It was just terrible. And he had a kind of a similar juiced up thing on 5 days before this thing happened. And then he in Detroit, and I think around the same time he did his phone call. I have heard the audio of it. It was a video call where a lot of the donors of a certain group, and he did indeed say, "We got to put a bullseye on him." And this is, things like that, or like he's a danger to the nation. All this stuff where people are saying Trump cannot be president. He will destroy our government. He'll destroy our country. Well, look around. Trump hasn't been around for 4 years, and there's a whole lot of destruction going on that he has nothing to do with. And so, destruction to our Fourth Amendment privacy, our First Amendment rights. Millions and I'm not a Trump follower, but I have eyes. I see 20 million people that it's literally like what happened to Rome when the Goths just poured into Rome, and rather than sort that all out, they just let them do it, and that was the beginning of the fall of Rome. I mean, uh, what is the matter with people thinking that illegal entry into the country is a good thing? We've never let this happen before. We've always decided when it was time to be open to immigration, like everybody else is in other sovereign nations. Um, why am I finding during Biden's administration a lot of these people showing up with ID cards, passports, voter application? There's one guy came to one place to get a job. He couldn't speak English well, but this guy had a lot of Mexicans that could speak with him, and he spoke Spanish as well. But I have a video of this guy saying, "I couldn't believe it. This guy came back, and he's already got ID. He's already got a driver's license, and he's an illegal alien. He came over illegally, you know." And it is not a joke, and it's not a myth. There are people in the Democratic Party who want to give these people who are not citizens, not gone through the process, the ability to vote. So this could be the big mess that happens this time. You only need a few thousand people from over the border voting in battle states. And then suddenly Biden wins a landslide. So it's possible I'll be wrong, and they'll drag this poor human being through all the way to a new inauguration day. Maybe they'll have to roll him in and have some Kamala speak for him or do sign language or something, because this is elder abuse. I mean, I realize now that the president has always been Jill. President Jill. She runs the show. And the crack addict who had the laptop full of stuff, Hunter, is his counsel in the family. So what a mess. Yeah, and it's really a struggle whether the Obama front of the Democratic Party will push him out. Um, and then they have to go with Kamala Harris, who was the worst campaigner in the last election, one of the worst campaigners in modern American history. She had to bug out of the 2026 primaries at the Iowa caucus because she couldn't even get 1% of the vote. So she didn't she got less than 1% of the vote. And that was the end of her career. Tulsi Gabbard just in the first debate just threw a truth bomb at her that she could not respond to in a proper way. And it was like, well, we all thought, well, that's the end of her career. Thank God. Now she's going to be president. And I think this there are people who, I mean, Tucker Carlson got into this last year. He kind of took the red pill last year, and I've got the interview excerpt where he talks about it, where he basically said, oh, they're going to kill him. They're not going to let him. And he very adroitly showed the escalations of the way, since it's all started with Trump, how Trump has survived all of these. And, whether it happens to Trump or Martin Luther King, or whether it happens to somebody like Osho, my teacher, there's a pattern I've seen firsthand. I've seen it, I've seen it with the loss of Kennedy, the loss of Malcolm X, the loss of Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy Sr., and my teacher. There's a pattern. If you keep winning your court cases, if you keep legally being victorious, and I said when all these lawfare things were stacked up against Trump, I said they'll all not get through. They'll all eventually be ended. And it looks like we're well on the way of that, especially now after, he's fight. It's all exposed now. The Democratic Party's exposed. They had to take off all these hate-mongering ads. And I watched some of them. They were like, it's like, you gotta stop him. He's evil. You gotta stop him. Yeah, just like Yitzhak Rabin must be hung. Yitzhak Rabin will draw him as a head of Yitzhak on a dog or a jackal. And Netanyahu, who is still with us after all these years, he would just be quiet and when his people were going, kill him, kill him, kill him. He didn't step up and say, look, this is not the way we act. We're a civilized group. Don't say this in front of me. Let's not cause a climate of darkness that might actually see someone killed. No, he didn't say that. He was, and his wife, Isaac Rabin's wife, was absolutely right to her grave to point him out and say, he murdered my husband with another hand. So the same ugliness is happening with Trump, whether you like Trump or not. This is not civilized behavior. If you're going to stop Trump, stop it with the more intelligent ideas. Don't start fighting about handicaps in golf. Even Trump at one point of that said, uh, this is getting childish. Let's get back to it. He said that, and Biden was like, because they were, oh, I have a 5. Oh, really, a 5? Okay, I don't think so. And then Trump said, "Oh, come on, this is childish. Let's get back to the questions." You know. Now, I got, to be fair, Trump destroyed Biden in that, and they let him because usually they would stop him. But you watch how he always got. Can I say something about what he said last time? And they let him do it every time. So, CNN, those guys were ready to give Trump the access to destroy Biden. They never gave him those extra times. He would forcibly take it and make him look stupid. But they always said, "Yeah, yeah, go ahead, go ahead." Like, yeah, kind of why you're here. We're going to take care of him first, and then we'll take care of you. Um, and I mean, the way he deflected all of his faults was brilliant. Ugly because because these people weren't calling him on it. But Trump was like, he did his snake oil salesman thing and how wonderful it was and how it was really incredible what we did and all that. I mean, yeah, and buy the snake oil, it's wonderful. But and then Trump, and then Biden, oh God, he was like going, and I sad in a way because my mother had in her final days, she also had the same thing. And actually, when I look at Biden now, it reminds me of her because that like upper tooth kind of it's a face that tightens up from Parkinson's dementia. And fortunately for my mom, she in the final days of her life, because she was a meditator, it was amazing to see what happened. The Parkinson's just stopped, and she was laying there lying in her bed, watching her breath, and she could communicate with me clearly.
This is the day she died?
No, this is when it was finally clear that the time had come, and I mean, I won't go into detail, but you can imagine there's, as any hospice person will tell you, sometimes you'll have a couple days where everything outrage that happened in all the years happens in 2 days. And then, she was in bed and couldn't get out. And I said, Vipassana, that's her sannyas name. I said, I think this is it. I think you're letting go. And she went, uh-huh, uh-huh, yeah, like that. And then I remember one time she kind of closed her eyes and didn't open them. Was just breathing there. I was sleeping at the base of her bed every night and just being there, playing these beautiful discourses of Osho that she loved so much. And then one time her eyes were open and I kind of got near to her and I put my ear on her front teeth. And then she said, "I'll be okay." And that was, and it sounded like, it's like she's whispering from the beyond. I mean, I just almost felt her statement and heard it. It's like, and so that was the last time she could really speak. But then I could communicate to her through her exhalations. The, I, you know, the guy that could read what Mayor Baba was saying when he stopped speaking for the rest of his life. Oh, he's saying this and that, because this was what he was doing, and it meant something. And I mean, I was able to understand her because I'd say something and she'd go, "Oh," or she would, and so she couldn't speak anymore, but she would, her exhalations were like Shakespeare to me. I understood what she was saying. So anyway, that's a whole other story. It was a very beautiful story. Um, what happened, how she died was, I hope I die like that. It was beautiful.
See, with my father, his mind's gone, but his body is in good shape.
Yeah,
His heart's strong, his
yeah.
lungs are strong. And it's just like, it's
Well, I was
Um,
surprised that I even Parkinson's dementia. My experience of Parkinson's, if I had a choice between regular dementia and Parkinson's dementia, I'd rather have Parkinson's because she was a meditator like me, and she was still there. It was like she was imprisoned in that, but you could really feel she was still there. It's not like where it's like, wow, we're gone. I don't think Biden has worked enough on his soul to. It's too bad. Hope when he goes, he kind of gets clarity and go, hey, what the hell have I been doing? But anyway, we all have our faults, and death is the point where we can just let it go and forgive ourselves. And if we can't forgive ourselves, accept the fact and go to
going
the.
back, going back to the Tecumseh
Mm,
curse, when Trump came up from him,
yeah,
being on the podium, and then the security, the
yes,
Secret Service lifted him up,
yeah,
and the blood was on his face.
yeah.
The
Because he,
very first thing I thought was war paint. Yeah, I knew it was blood, but I was thinking like,
that's
this
interesting.
is kind of like,
It is
he's
war
saying fight,
paint.
fight, fight, and this is like, I'll tell you, it's got that kind of warrior kind of feel to it.
Well, this triggered a memory, and this is going to be in my articles too, because it kind of it's like you're not. It's like my articles. You think it's going to go normal, and then it goes some really wild place. And but this yeah, I mean that is amazing insight, Paul, because uh, he comes up, and but here's why. Now I'm going to look at some ways to test it. I do a lot with reincarnation, and I've had to kind of face the controversies that are going on in the internet where whole websites debate whether because I look so much like Nostradamus, whether I am Nostradamus returned or not. Um, I can only say that I have a deep karmic connection to him, but I won't, that's all I can say at the moment. Anyway, the point is that it has come up for a while now that because actually Donald Trump looks very much like two famous warriors who were fearless under combat. The first was Jean-Michel Ney, one of the marshals of France under Napoleon, who was known as by Napoleon as the bravest of the brave. He was a redheaded, cherry blonde, redheaded. He used to be a hussar, and then he ended up going up through the ranks. He was fearless and brave to a fault, because sometimes what would happen, especially when he was in his 40s and he'd been fighting 40 battles, and it's about as enough Ph.D. to screw around with you. I mean, I haven't written it, but I'd like to write an article where I point out that Napoleon lost at Waterloo with Ney running the show because they both had 50 battles of PTSD to deal with, and they were in their 40s, and it's really time to stop doing this. And Napoleon even said when he won his greatest victory at Austerlitz in 1805 against the Austrians and Russians, he said to his generals after it, he said, I've already been through 10 major engagements in the Italian campaigns and all before I was Emperor of the French. And um, with the stress that's involved in the totality and the sleepless nights and the command and just be on campaign mode, where you just keep going, healthy, sick, wounded, doesn't matter. You keep going, berserker style. There's an element of that. So um, he said, I have about 50 battles. I've already fought 10. I think this body and this mind I'll only have about 50, another 40 battles I can win at this level of intensity. Waterloo was the 50th of his career. His 50th battle, major battle, was the one he lost and got routed at because he was so old that he didn't take his little cat naps like he did at Wagram, where he's fighting the biggest battle of that period of time. And at one point, they rolled out the bear carpet, and in the battle's going on, he had to fall asleep. So he went to sleep for 20 minutes. He just rolled into the bear rug and went out like a light. And then got up because he naturally only slept 2.5 hours a day. Funny thing, Trump, similar. But anyway, so what happened is that Michel Ney at Waterloo uh, basically ran the battle when Napoleon was too sick with a urine infection to, and Ney had the worst day he'd ever have of this fault he has of being single pointed, forgetting the bigger picture. He just charged bravely with the French cavalry into the British squares, and he did not give support, infantry support. He did not bring up engineers to spike 300 British cannon while they were fighting the squares. These guys could have come up and put a nail in all the cannons, and the British would have no firepower. Um, he had his horse shot out from under him 7 times. He lost 7 horses in that battle. When the rout happened, when the Prussians finally flanked the French and it was getting sunset and the Imperial Guard had been defeated and were running off the hill, because they actually been flanked by some Belgian soldiers. It wasn't the British that forced them off. But anyway, that's just been found out. The he was seen with a broken sword with no horse, staggering around all bloodied and full of dirt, and he was yelling at people going, "Do you not recognize me? I'm Ney." You know? So, he had that kind of wildness like Trump. Um, and then he was tried and uh, found guilty because he handed over his troops. He was going to take Napoleon and put him in a cage and bring him back to Paris. And what is interesting about the story is very well done, by the way, by a movie with in 1970 movie called Waterloo. It's one of the best Napoleonic battlefield movies, and it had Rod Steiger playing a really good burned out Napoleon. Really captured it. Uh, I mean, he probably was one of the best Napoleons. And then this Russian guy who played him in the War and Peace, the Russian War and Peace, he was the best. He was the closest to the guy, and he even spoke with a Corsican Italian lilt to his French. So even that much detail, he was speaking like French Italian, because Napoleon had a real thick accent. Most people lose that. And so incredible performance if you're into Napoleonic movies. But anyway, um, Ney was tried and for treason, and he had this group of men who were going to shoot him as soldiers. And he said, and what he did is unbuttoned his coat and his shirt to his bare chest. And he said, "This will be my final order in service of the French army. Shoot to kill to the heart. I will give the order." And he said, "Fire." And they, boom, shot him. And then marched off and left him there to be picked up later against the wall, face down. So that's one person that Trump looks very much like him. And the picture I'll use in the illustration of this will not be the Trump you see now, because Ney never got that old. I will find pictures of Trump at the same year that Ney was shot in his 50s, early 50s. And then the other person that he looks a whole lot like is Patton, George S. Patton, the famous German, excuse me, the famous American tanker. I usually am studying German tankers, but German Panzer people. But anyway, so here's the thing. I'm not going, I have often found it interesting that people who've had past life experiences, the one way you can find out if it's happened is count 8 to 9 months. If there's an 8 to 9 months separation between the death and the birth of the purported new life, that's one great way to find out if there's some there to this outrageous, strange story. So the thing I can't do a birth thing from Ney to Patton, but I can use Patton's grandfather, he looked just like his grandfather, and he died in the Shenandoah Valley fight in the American Civil War on the Confederate side. He ended up dying for the Virginia Cadet School, where all the cadets went out and made this charge against the adult Union people and pushed them off the field. Famous painting. It's really amazing painting. And he was killed in that. He was mortally wounded. So I'm going to see if Ney's death matches that death, with a birth. the other thing that's very intriguing is to match. I don't remember yet, but when Patton was dishonored and had to leave Third Army, he remained in Germany in this little kind of a well, anyway, he was dishonored by saying too many nasty things about the Russians, and a lot of them were not really right to say either. But anyway, that was his opinion. So,
Let me just interject. All right, so in Judaism, and I'm sure that in other religions they have something similar, the idea of the recycling of the souls.
mm,
All right, and that sometimes soul sparks,
mm,
all right, are recycled because they didn't fully finish what they were supposed to do.
mm.
All right, and it gets a little bit
Got
more
parallels in
complicated.
Hindu reincarnation, actually. Yeah.
And it gets a little bit more complicated because each generation it's a lesser of the spark,
Mm,
okay, of the previous sparks.
mm,
All right, so Trump was born on June 14th, 1946.
hmm. I was just about to
Patton,
get there.
Patton died
Mm,
December 21st, 1945.
yeah.
So there is this.
Yeah, it's
I do
close.
think this does that. Yeah, it's strange. It's
I
very
mean, I hadn't
strange.
checked it. I was going to check it later tonight when I get back to that part of my articles, but I had a recollection that he died around the end of 1945, and so
No, he
that's
did,
that's interesting.
and he did. It wasn't a Jeep
And
accident, wasn't it?
it was a truck. He
Truck.
was in actually I Brooks Norman, who used to be my neighbor, who was an amazing storyteller of World War II. He was in Third Army. He had some amazing stories to talk about George Patton. And he may still be alive. He's probably in his hundreds now, but but he used to tell me amazing stories about what he did. And he was the captain of a armored company of reconnaissance, Third Army. And I mean, one of the best stories is they took Cherbourg after Normandy landing, and they went up to the peninsula to try to capture Cherbourg so they could get a port for the Normandy landings. And so anyway, they had a lot of fighting up there that he talked about, but then they went farther south from Cherbourg, about 30 miles down um, this large peninsula, and they found this huge German magazine of artillery shells and all kinds of stuff. And it was 4th of July, 1944. And so he had his whole company were all parked about a mile and a half back on a little ridge, waiting for the fireworks show. They were going to have fireworks. So his OX of the company and him, they're on the ground, well, a lot closer to the magazine. And he's got the plunger and he looks over to the captain and says, "Happy 4th, Brooks." he plunged he plunged the thing, and because I asked him, what were you the most scared in the war, he said, well, in some really dumb thing. And so the guy goes, "Ooh." And he said, I never was more frightened of Bastogne, none of that put together, because this huge like tactical nuclear mushroom cloud, it was a huge explosion. They could see it in Cherbourg. It's like giant mushroom cloud. And that wasn't the problem. It was when all the big pieces of metal, parts of tanks and large shells started going boom, boom, boom all around them. And they're looking back at the guys and they're all going, oh, that's fun. And they're literally about to get crushed by the debris. And it just missed them. And then, of course, a few hours later, a whole bunch of Jeeps are coming up with a whole load of brass star general people climbing out of their, and they're going, "What the hell happened here?" "Oh, we don't know, sir." That's what Brooks said. "We don't know, just something blew up. I don't know. Maybe the Germans did it." So, but but I also remember one time during the Cherbourg thing, he was fighting, and this guy, a very cheery guy, a little too cheery, drove up with this little rocket launcher truck. hey, can I fire my things here? And Brooks said, well, sure, go ahead. So he launches the thing and then races out of the area. And then Brooks's company gets hit by all kinds of 88 shells, you know. And so, Mr. Nice Guy got some of his people killed. And so later this guy came up and he remembered him, and Brooks pulled out his pistol and said, get the hell out of here. Move that thing out of here, So that was one of the absurd moments of death and destruction of the war. And he also went to Korea, and he had I think he said he had to shoot Chinese soldiers off from. He opened the hatch and shoot the soldiers that were climbing up on his Patton tank. Um, Ironically called that. One of the best stories was there was Patton had this trailer and had a huge plaster map of Europe, and they were in France now, and they were moving past Paris and really moving fast. And there was a new guy there, a new officer replacing somebody who died or got wounded, and he didn't know the drill. And so Patton's going through the whole briefing with his high-pitched voice. Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go there. And then the guy said something you never say around Patton. He said, well, once we take those objectives, what do we do next? Patton, and he starts unstrapping one of his pearl handle pistols. And the guy goes, oh no, he's not going to shoot him, is he? He takes the pistol out, turns it around, and he says, if anyone needs to ask me where you go next, and he took the pistol and rammed it into where Berlin was and put a big crater in it. He said, you're going to Berlin. So he was, outrageous like Trump, controversial, but very brave. Just like Ney, controversial, but you couldn't. I mean, one of the things, most amazing things Ney did when the Russian campaign was an utter disaster and Napoleon lost an army of 20 European nations in Russia, 600,000 men, only 100,000 came out alive. And very few of the central part, the 450,000 Napoleon commanded that went to Moscow, only 20,000. No horses, they ate them. And Ney was the rear guard commander for a lot of that. And he was in this beautiful fur coat and he had his bicorn hat. And he literally was firing at the Cossacks. He shot at the Cossacks on the Russian side of the Niemen Bridge and threw his gun at him and walked to Europe. So he was the last guy to fire a shot from the French side in the 1812 campaign, which of course was the end of Napoleon. 3 years later, he was done. So there's this very interesting. We'll see if the grandfather of Patton, who died in the Civil War, we'll see if the family look kind of stays with the whole family all through very much. So we'll see, and then I'll see about his, maybe with his father and the grandfather and father. I don't know. Anyway, we have an entertainingly interesting coincidence, perhaps. But I'll say this though, when I saw that shot of him, by the way, I've got all the things he was saying. When they said down, 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 he'd already jumped, and then the Secret Service people went down. And then he's coming up and he's saying, I want my shoes, get my shoes. And at first he was saying like a request, and then he was ordering, get my shoes. And then what the gal said, yeah, we got your shoes. It's okay. So, and he
Well,
did
why
this.
would the shoes be off?
Well, they had him down on the ground, and I don't know why. I don't know why. Anyway, his
I
shoes
mean,
were off.
I doubt. I would be shocked if he's wearing loafers. Maybe, I mean,
Well,
I would think
maybe.
that he would be wearing tie ups.
Well, he might have been wearing a. I mean, he has the money to get they must have been very precious to him because he said, "Get my shoes," because he might have his most comfortable shoes that look like they're normal, but they're made like loafers. Maybe, I mean, he stands up there a long, long time. He's a big guy. I mean, I understand that. I work standing up 8, 9 hours a day. Well, I do it because I have big flat feet. So I'm barefoot. Um,
Sometimes that when things happen, it may seem very mundane, but
yeah,
there's a signal that if people can hear the signal or see the signal, that there's a meaning to it. Now,
Well,
I'm not saying that he was conscious of it, but
no, it's one
there's
of those
something going on
reveals
with,
that happens only when you're
yeah,
really shocked. I mean, the
yeah.
famous last words of Richard Wagner was he had his heart attack, and when they carried him over to the couch and had him lay on Cosima's lap, he looked and said, "Mein Uhr." And now people thought he meant, because it means two things in German. It means my hour, but in German you call your watch an hour. So he had this new watch. He said, "Mein Uhr," and so they got the Uhr and they put it back on his chain, and he got it tucked in his pocket. It was almost like, and then he relaxed and looked up at Cosima, a very sweet smile, and then he blissful. She thought he had blissfully gone to sleep. He was just like, it's why his death mask is one of the most famous death masks, because it looks like he just died in utter ecstasy. Um, and she thought he felt so alive. She thought for hours she didn't know that he was dead. He thought that he had just gone to sleep. He just went, and just looking at her as beloved, and just kind of what Tristan does, Isolde has with Tristan, and Tristan is almost a bit prophetic. The death of Tristan in the opera is a very similar way that Wagner went out. The so but when he got up, and they were really literally going to like carry him off on his feet, but he said, "Wait, wait, wait," because they were ready to go. But he ordered them, "Wait, wait, wait," and then that's when he went. He did the fight, fight, and then he kept doing it, But they followed his orders. I mean, in that moment, I mean, I said, "My God, this man has been a warrior before, and he's fearless. A lot of people may hate him, but that man's got guts." And he just, you never know until you've been through the baptism of fire what you're going to do. But that man just got shot at, and this is a war. And the way he came up all bloodied, all the blood going across his face, because the picture of him on the floor with his mouth open has come out in Getty Images. It's an amazing picture. And him rise up like that and have the presence of mind like only a great commander can, bloodied and in mayhem of war, keeps his centering and he just said, "Fight." And they were ready to run him out as fast as they could. And he stopped them and said,
Well, he had the instinct to also look at the media camera, that there,
"Yes,
so that podium is
yes,
facing the
yes,
stage that most people don't know about, that where all the media cameras are. So it was
correct."
almost as if he was like, there was two things, maybe three. It was fight, fight, fight.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one, maybe I'm looking into this too deeply, but one fight was for the audience that was there.
That's right.
The other fight is to the audience through the camera,
Yes.
and then the third fight is really, to kind of like to fight the media.
Yeah.
See, I see, like, I feel
He's a
like
media warrior. His world of battle, and
he
it's his greatest
understands
genius.
he
His greatest
understands
genius is his
perception.
media, and
Yeah.
a great commander. I mean, I just sorry to interrupt you. I'll let you say it, but before it flies away, if you watch the four different versions of Oliver Stone's Alexander, and they're all great. The variation on a theme. I don't think anybody's ever done three director's cuts, but um, when you're seeing the Battle of Gaugamela, where he's fighting the 250,000-man army with 44,000 Macedonians, and he's done this whole thing where he's lured the Persian wing of cavalry away from the main area, and then just at the right moment, in all the dust, he turns all of his cavalry into the gap, which will lead right up to throwing a javelin at the Persian king Darius. And they get in a fight with a bunch of guys, and it's really like, and Oliver Stone has been in war. He really his platoon, all of that. It's he got the fog of war. They're in the dust. There's dust everywhere. All the stirred up men and horses, and they're having this big fight. And then there's this point where in the middle of it, off in the distance of all this mayhem, he sees Darius's chariot, and he instantly, as a great commander would, he does not lose his the bigger picture, and he tells him, mount up. He just immediately drops the bow and goes, mount up, follow me. And this is the famous scene where Alexander is coming with his javelin, and he throws it right in Darius's face, who does this, and he gets freaked out and takes his chariot with all its wheel knives that he mows down his own people to escape Alexander's presence. I mean, Alexandros means protector of men, and it's so anyway that the point of that is this understanding of, and he's just been shot. He's never been shot before. He's in this terrible situation. There's a scene where he's down there with the blood rolling off his face, off his ear, and he's fighting off shock, and when he gets up, he's already commanding them to, okay, do it now, and he says, wait. In all that mayhem, somebody who has the gift of command keeps his wits about him. Does not forget the objective. The objective was, you wanna try to kill me and you miss it. I'm going to throw that right into your camera and maybe win this presidency in one shot. And so, as far as him being a warrior, I mean, he was a football player. He was damn good. I remember one time when he did this joke thing with the guy who runs all the funny wrestling stuff, where I saw him like leap out and grab the guy and tackle him, in his suit. I mean, um, people forget that he was quite an athlete before, and he still is pretty damn good swing. You look at his golf swing, it's pretty good for his age. You don't see a lot of 78-year-old people who can do what he can do, walking around and all that stuff. So, he had, if you've been athletic most of your life, you still have a lot of it in a later date. The fact that I spent 20 years running every other day, 3.5 miles, I'm seeing the fruits of that in my old age. That's got a vitality from that. So, you can do things to your body that over time will come back to bite you, but you can also do good things with your body that will also counterbalance that. And, Trump's got the test of the baptism of fire, and I have a lot more respect for him. I can see he must have been a great warrior in other lives, the way he handled that. And he had the presence of command to utilize the media in this war of media. And basically, what with the debate and now this, the Democrats had to take all their ads off because they're all hate speech. They're all basically say, yeah, stop him, kill, sort of saying, kill the guy, put him in jail, lock him up. You know, so he's won this. Now the question is, will they let him be president? He's won it. If he's not killed or poisoned or something, he's the next president, whether people like it or not.
See, Alex Jones did a show, I think it was today or yesterday,
I
and
saw
he
it.
was basically saying the next step is going to be poisoning or an explosive, some sort of explosive device.
Yeah,
Like a
that's
car bomb. He kept on saying
yeah.
car bomb. So, and I
Or
was like,
something happens to the plane. Oops,
oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, no, this I hope for his 11th hour luck. He's got it. But if he is president, that's a whole other challenge because um, Trump has a very powerful mediumistic instinct. Uh, but it can be manipulated by people who can make him do their work. And this was the biggest danger I saw in my Trump for president astrological predictions that I wrote in 2015 for It's the most accurate book I ever wrote because I thought, oh, he's going to run. And within 15 minutes of looking at his chart, I went, my God, he can he could win an upset against Hillary Clinton. He has a real chance if he can survive all the hurdles to the election day on 8th November 2016. Um, because he had the best stars I'd ever seen of anybody I've been predicting this stuff with since 1968. It's like this guy could pull off a miracle. He could win electoral or something. He can win this. I said Hillary would win the popular vote, and I said by 2.5%, which she did. But I kind of didn't rule out the fact that, yeah, she wins popular. I was right on both in that one. She won the popular and he won the electoral. Guess who's in the presidential seat? And so I'm absolutely confident that destiny wants him to be the president. Now, the I think that he will win the votes to be president. He might even win the popular vote. But will they count it? Will they let him? And there is such a force because, you know, this is not my first dance with this force. I saw what they did to my master Osho, you know, in the Reagan era when people were so upset with him kind of turning the apple cart over of American, just telling truth. He wasn't harming anybody, but you know, they went after him. They arrested him without he won all his immigration fraud trials and he was winning, and they decided, and they openly, when they kicked him out of America, they openly, the head guy of the federal prosecutor, he admitted on television, uh, oh, we didn't have anything on him. So we figure we'll just use some way to, all we have to do is get the Bhagwan out of Oregon and out of the country, and then that'll be the end of this city of people all red, my city. And so they arrest him without a warrant for escaping a indictment that was unsealed. You know, his lawyers were saying, "Look, we can bring him down, make this peaceful, and bring him to the jail, and you can put him in jail and all that in Oregon." But when they said, "No, we don't have we don't have a hidden indictment. We don't have an indictment." They kept saying that we don't have an indictment, and so he gets in the jet and flies across to Charlotte. Dumb move. He should have gone over the Canadian border and dealt with it that way. But my people are not very worldly. Um, they're very innocent, and so they went all the way across the. I mean, Max Brecher is a Swami Anando. He went undercover for us. He used to be a New York reporter, really good journalist, old school. The facts, man, the facts. And so after this all done, he went undercover, got back in his three-piece suit from New York and played what he was before, New York journalist, and said, you know, so he went to Vicatia, the governor of Oregon. He went to Frohmeyer, the Secretary of Justice, and he went to all the National Guard people. And he basically stated to them, look, your story of getting the evil Rajneeshis out of here has not had its day. And I want to thank you for the great things you did. And I want to be sure that we get it all documented. So I'm going to tape you and transcribe everything so that your story can be told. And these not clueless idiots spilled beans. You know, and some of it was quite shocking. The fact that I realize now that the whole concept of doing a Waco on some group like this, was not a new thing that happened in 1992. They were going to do that to us. It was called Operation Serenity, and they had 8,000 National Guardsmen poised and ready. They had armored columns, APCs, and all, and they were going to send a group of helicopters to start shooting Osha's compound. And they were hoping that the Rajneesh security and the Rajneesh police force would respond and defend that. And then they would say, oh, we've got mayhem in the city of Rajneeshpuram, bring in the National Guard, take them out. And so they were planning that on us. We got wind of it through some of our friends in the Oregonian government and the Oregon government, and who saw this thing was happening. And so Osho sacrificed himself. He said, well, I've got to leave. So he made a big show of it. So that because it's me they want, and I want to protect my people. So he got on the jet. There were some sannyasins that we knew were already former people with Sheila who came back as federal snitches, and they called the federal government. And when he took off in his jet and made a big picture of it, going, maybe that's why he went to Charlotte. He was just trying to get as far away from Rajneeshpuram and all of us, thousands of his lovers and disciples, to save us so we could go on going deeper. And he basically was arrested without a warrant. He was sent into the penitentiary system for 12 days, and they just kept jetting him to different penitentiary systems until we lost him for 3 days somewhere around Oklahoma. And it was there that they first, when they got, and of course, every prison he went to, because in those days we were on the news for 2 years straight on the mainstream news, which is at 30-minute news, CBS, NBC. The whole world was watching what was going on in my little commune. It was the big news of 1984 and 85. Everybody wants to forget that, but that's what was happening because we were watching it too. And I'm even in some of the things, you can see me walking around my red cowboy hat, my Prince Valiant haircut, a much smaller, shorter beard. And what happens is every place you go, it would kind of confound them trying to hide him because all the prisoners knew him because they watched TV. And they would help him. So all these, black people, Mexicano people, all, and they saw here's another brown man the man's got him in cuffs. And, he's this little Indian guy. And you'll see famous pictures of him in his robes. He's got chains and bracelets, cuffs that are connected to a chain around his waist and leg irons. And so he could hardly lift his hands this guy couldn't get himself out of his own robe. He was so frail. And so here he is beaming in these pictures, and here he is covered in chains. Here's another moment where somebody of some interest deals with the injustice or a violent thing, and he's just smiling and radiant as he's walking from the jail to the court, and some guy in a truck yells out, "Happy Halloween, Bhagwan!" And he looked up and went, "Thank you." And just, radiant, you know, they'd had him in a cell smeared with shit all night, gave him a little water, and there's a shot of the security guard. They got a shot, and there he is, and he's just very aware, taking his little cup of water and just sitting there. And then what they did is they put him in, they got him out of through us is they got him out of the penitentiary system and went into the state of Oklahoma system. And they put him in the Oklahoma County Jail, where things happen to political people like Silkwood, about the atomic energy issue. It was a very good movie made about that. Karen Silkwood was had an accident and died in prison. And this is how they also do it. They get you in jail. That's what they were trying to do with Assange. They tried to get him in a Balmarsh prison. Here he was for all those years. 14 years he was either in a small room in an Ecuadorian embassy or all this. And oddly enough, they did the same thing to him that they did to my master. They got him to take one count and admit that if they took him to jail, took him to trial for an immigration fraud, they'd probably win. But he's still saying, I didn't do it. But Osho wanted to do it. When all this stuff happened, I'm getting a little ahead of the story, but before I get to that part, what happened to him is that the first jail cell they put him into was one where the guy in there looked at him and said, "Oh, Bhagwan, it's good to see you. I'm sorry it's in this situation. They put you in this cell because I'm dying of terminal herpes, and they want you to get it. So keep pounding at that door until somebody comes and lets you out." Because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get you with herpes. And so he finally pounded enough and they got him out, and then they put him in his own cell. And then they did a really weird thing where they opened up the cell and they threw in this moldy, ugly mattress, and he was holding it like a hot potato, like he didn't want to hold it too long. And he got out and he left it. And he didn't have a pillows or anything, so he had to sleep on the floor. So he rolled it up so that he could at least sleep on the floor and have his head up. And then a couple of years later, he had all these weird things happening, like almost radiation stuff happening on this side of his head. He had lost all the teeth on this side, and what we assume is that when the guy came in again, he came out rushed and pulled the thing out, and then he was all happy, and he gave him a sandwich, which had this sauce on it. And when Osho bit into it, it tasted metallic, and he said, "Hey, what's this?" That's when they gave him thallium poisoning, heavy metals. So he got a little radiation, a little isotope was in that. We figure that it's a little isotope number where, and what was lucky is that they put the isotope next to where you're going to lay your head down. So when he rolled it up, the isotope was farther away, so the radiation, couldn't have given him a stroke or something. And say, "Oh, look, he died. He's just old guy. What to do?" So So they poisoned him and a little radiation on the side of his head. And then, we finally got him out. And the idea, he said, "I want to fight this. I didn't do anything wrong. I wanted to fight." And basically his lawyers, a lot of them crying actually about it. And the Sannyazin lawyers, it was recounted what the federal lawyers said. He said, "Look, you've seen what we can do. Yeah, you've seen what we can do. And we have the power to delay this court case for years, and your master will be in jail for years. And, just remember that. Evil people. I'm ashamed to be an American when I think of this." And so they forced him to admit guilt, just like Assange being flown out to Saipan before he goes to Australia to officially say that he on one count is guilty, which is a lie. But it was important to save his life, just like it was important to save our master's life, because actually this Talion, he only lived 4 more years. He aged 20 years in 4 years. And even though he was beautiful at death, his hair was all white, long beard, and he was only 58, but he looked like he was 78. Thallium poisoning does that. And so, and I was there guarding his ashes when we burned him for 3 days and nights with breaks. We do 3-hour sessions. So I've seen what this country can do in the name of democracy, in the name of noble things. I can see what monstrous things can be done because it's been done to my people, and the most beautiful man I've ever known in any life I lived. So, but still, I have hope for America. I'm still here in America because I love the Constitution as much as my master did. He used to say, "Americans are beautiful. I love Americans. Your government, though, it sucks." That was back in the 80s. And it is exponentially sucking more than it ever did. And and so I I am a patriot of one of the greatest contributions to the history has been the U.S. Constitution, is the American dream of democracy. And I feel like I'm part of the fight, being part of the alternative media, like you are, and me, and others, that we're fighting for the future of this country and for the future of free speech, privacy, the ability to worship whatever religion you want. I mean, we didn't get that right as neo-sannyasins in the Reagan administration. The extreme right-wing Christian influence that was happening at that time. They pressured the Reagan administration hard to deny us our First Amendment rights of freedom of religion. And now and we were cast to the four corners of the earth. And now my right of free speech is being denied. Some of the places that I've spoken, and you've seen me, probably most of you never first seen me other than in Coast to Coast AM. 30 years. The 7th of July would have been my 30th anniversary of being a well-known guest on Coast to Coast AM. And they don't return even my emails now. So but it's their loss because I'm here with you and other alternative media outlets, you know, and the brave people that are in your family of watchers. And I'm grateful to be with you. It's not important that you have multitudes following you, because the thing that's going to change this situation we're in is maybe only 200 people need to become completely luminous with righteousness and love. That's all it's needed. It's like the story of Job, the Hasidic story of Job, or Lot. No, Lot. Sorry, Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, he's bargaining with God. He said, "Well, if you can find 5 righteous people in Sodom and Gomorrah, would you save the city?" Yeah, kind of. And then he finally haggled God down to one. Well, I live here in Sodom and Gomorrah, and I am a righteous man. Can you save them for that? You know, so I mean, that's at least my telling of the story. The whole point is being the same. You know, it's like we need 200 righteous human beings, more than the average, to change the vibratory collective. So, and if it happens, this is the symptoms of success that I'm about to lay out. And now I'll get to Germany, because this is another real stepping over the grave of the future of civilization that's happened. I mean, we were talking earlier about how American satellites were guiding Ukrainian drones to hit early warning towers of the Russian Federation system. That means for a time there, 10% of the early warning of an attack, Russia was blind. If you did that in the Cuban Missile Crisis, World War III would have immediately erupted. You know, they've got this big mistake here in the West. They think because when the Russians don't react to the insanity of the things that we're trying to do with them to provoke them, they don't react because they love life. They love their Christian country that accepts and respects other religions. And they know what our mad leaders want to do, and they know our mad leaders are mad. So they're having to deal with crazy people who don't understand what nuclear war will do. It'll kill them all. And it might kill out the Russians, but all of them will die too. 6 billion people will die, at least, maybe more, of the 8 billion. But so another step on my own grave kind of moment happened, the grave of humanity actually, is that Germany has one thing to state here. The last treaty, and Trump's responsible for this, by the way, the last arms limitation treaty that was the cornerstone of ending the Cold War, won. Bush did it, and then Obama changed the nuclear deterrent doctrine to something far more dangerous. So he had his part in it too. Bush took out the ABM anti-ballistic missile treaty. And then the final one was the INF, intermediate missile agreement. This is when in the late 80s, the Russians had created the SS-20 Scud-like missile. That was a regional ballistic missile that could 10 minutes take out all of Europe. It would just be, it's so close, it's so immediate. And so we created the Pershing missiles. I think we put the Pershing missiles in first, and then they came up with the SS-20s, but I'm not certain about that. It doesn't matter. Tit for tat, both groups had taken the danger of thermonuclear war to such a dangerous level when we had 70,000 nukes in the world. I mean, good news. We've got them down. We've cut them down to about 20,000 or something like that. So we can only destroy the world twice over, not 8 times over. And so that's progress. But what has happened since the 21st century is the United States has bugged out of all of its honors, all of its treaties, completely ruined its reputation as a person whose treaties mean anything. We might as well be Native Americans dealing with the Americans that took the West. Oh, here's your treaty. But this is with nuclear weapons, folks. And so when the treaty, I think it was in 2018 when the treaty was, or 2017 when Trump just ended the treaty unilaterally. He's again channeling people like Bolton and that are, this is where he's like Pinocchio and he gets guided off by the wolf and the other circus animals and they get him, oh, this is great, because there's this innocence about Trump too. But I'm really worried that they got his number and they're probably going to try to do it again. But they might not let him even get that far. We'll see. I hope that doesn't happen. That's civil war. Anyway, so the Trump was so Trump did this. He destroyed the last treaty, and to the point that the Russians said, "Why should we renew New START, the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty? It's clear you people can't honor contracts or treaties. You're dishonorable people." And so they said, so they're going to let that run out because that's already dead in the water as far as they were concerned. But in 2018, they decided we're going to honor the treaty that you backed out. And they told them, said, you're not going to honor the treaty, but we're going to honor the treaty. And they watched us like a hawk and said, now, if you guys start moving intermediate range Tomahawk missiles and other ballistic missiles like you had in the 1980s, like the Pershing, if you begin to do that, we will start rearming our missiles, our Kinjals, our regional ballistic missiles with nuclear weapons. But we are not going to start it. We're going to honor it. I mean, Orthodox Christians, which are most of the population of Russia and its leadership, they don't demand God change things and have arguments and make things happen their way. Their idea is that's God's work. Our work is to live righteously as best as we can, is to be good Christians. And they really are in that regard. They're not puritanical or anything like that. They're not evangelical wanting World War III to happen to fulfill an interpretation of God's eschatological prophecies that they believe is what he means. They have the hubris to project that their idea of God's mystery is what's going to happen. The Eastern Orthodox people don't do that. They say, we don't know what God wants to do. Our job is simple, to live as Christ lived and do that as best as we can. And so they don't have this aggressive, this wanting to push of Armageddon on the world because of their crack brain idea of what Armageddon is supposed to be that suits their evangelical lust for, manipulating Jewish peoples. But, I mean, everybody in Israel understands what the evangelical Zionists really want. They want to set up a situation where the Jews are confronted when Christ comes back to convert. And if they don't, then they're all. So, I mean, Netanyahu knows this. But he exploits the Christian Zionists as far as he can handle them. It's not as far as he can throw them. But anyway, so So what's happened is last year, the America sent its first nuclear tip cruise missile, Tomahawk missiles, to be stationed in Denmark. So that means, okay, the Russians said, all right, they're bringing their missiles back, just like 1987, 88, which nearly destroyed the world, was so hair trigger. And there were a lot more rational men in the West then. But anyway, the Russians are starting to rehearse and starting to manufacture their own, because now the next shot that's happening is Germany. Germany, which is where most of the bases of the United States, Ramstein and other places are, just like in the old Cold War. And they're going to bring now nuclear tipped tomahawks, and they've just ordered it, and they're going to pepper Germany with all kinds of batteries, and strategically located to go right for the heart of Russia. And the Russians are now moving up theirs. So we are at a dangerous place. And it's made more dangerous because we got a demented president. And we got a brave showman, but, you know, an open wide channel that can be easily manipulated like a child by from that side of him, by the powers of the deep state, who know what I know. And so, because, you know, Trump didn't get us into a new war, but it wasn't because they didn't try. Um, the deep state tried to talk him into 3 times, but his innocence saved us all, his luck. Because, you know, if he's lucky in that stuff, we're all lucky because we didn't go there. So 3 times they tried to start a big war with Russia and Middle East and all that by channeling him to make it happen. But his innocent 8-year-old stopped it at the last minute. John Bolton tried. Um, that big fat guy who used to be the CIA head who's lost all the weight, he tried.
Pompeo.
Pompeo, yeah. He's a man that should actually go to jail for, he's openly stated that he wanted to bring assassination to Assange. You know, and even Hillary Clinton said, can't we just drone him? What kind of people that we have? But you know, this problem again is they're there because we citizens have not played our part in defending this democracy. First off, most of our people don't even know what their rights are. Got a 4,250-page document that tells you what your Bill of Rights and how your government works. But most of you have grown up with never seeing the inside of a civics class since the 70s. I was in one of the last civics classes before they started quietly discontinuing that as a part of your matriculation, your diploma for high school, your basic diploma to get anything going. You knew your rights. It's one of the most important things that should be taught. And you should know how your government works because it's yours. It's of the people, for the people, by the people, as Lincoln said. I probably got the sequence wrong, but it's the same. And if you people are asleep, who do you think is going to run your country while you're sleeping and distracted with your TV sets and your cell phones and your little lives, and you've forgotten the bigger picture that most Americans understood for most of their time, because many of them had come from Europe and away from real tyranny. It was fresh in their memory. But now, you know, it's like most things happen. We've had a nice long run of comfort and wealth and affluence, you know, forcing the rest of the world to pay our debt off by the way we set up the US dollar. And that has created a situation where we've gotten flabby with our democratic responsibilities. We don't, and we just vote these people in and we forget all about it. You always have to make sure that whoever you vote into Washington or your local governments are looking over their shoulder, afraid of you, not the other way around. These people aren't afraid of us. They can run roughshod over us because We have our part in that. You'd only empower yourself when you stop blaming the other guy for what he did and look at yourself in the mirror. Then you empower yourself to break the pattern. So what I'm hoping is going to happen in the next few years is a lot of people are going to get a big goddamn shock about to what extent they have let their country be bought and sold, even by other countries. AIPAC runs clearer in this war that's going on in Israel. AIPAC runs the United States. And the death toll of Gaza is, I think, exceeds 183,000. I think it's 250,000 already, because in Leningrad they still had offices calculating and tabulating how many people, 2,500, were starving every day from the siege of Leningrad. The Israeli armed forces destroyed all those records, destroyed all those record keepers. We don't know anything about what's going on with the people in there. And when you consider what Lancet reported, the kind of consequential death that happens, and you like multiply it by 9 or something around that of the 38,000 that were actually confirmed. Um, the level of food that's getting into Gaza is almost as bad as what happened to Leningrad. So I would not be at all surprised if 2,500 people a day are dying of starvation in Gaza, just like Leningrad. And Leningrad lost 1 million people. 1 out of 3 Leningraders died mostly from starvation when Hitler laid siege to Leningrad, St. Petersburg. And AIPAC's got us, man. This genocide will go on, and they're going to starve them out, and so that's another thing that's going on. So anyway, that's any other things you want to talk about?
Well, we've gotten to that point of going over the 2 hour mark, but
Yeah,
I do want.
must be time there's fireworks going off in my end of
So
the world.
I do want to remind the audience that in the description of this video and all my videos with John, there's a link that'll take you to his website, and that way you can sign up for his periodical or do a reading. So before we go, John, maybe you can briefly remind the audience what the periodical is and what the readings are.
If you resonate with this, if even though some of what I talk about is very Saturnian reality checking, but if you resonate with this, and if you can help, the thing that's toughest about being in alternative media is that we don't have the big bucks. Telling truth is not good for business. The lamestream media and all that want you stupid and distracted, and they're lying to you about very dangerous things that they're saying are going a certain way. And you don't believe me, maybe they are going that way, but have an alternative to look at, to weigh what you're getting on Fox and CNN and the legacy NBC, CBS, ABC, and all that. Or the New York Times, which has really become the New York slime as far as data and accuracy. So I need help. I need financial support, and I'm of many of these people. So if you have a means, if you are moved by what I'm saying, if you have a means to just do a $60 donation to my PayPal, you go to hogueprophesy.com, HOGUEPROPHECY.com. You go there, and at the end of the free samples, you will see ways to join. You can do automatic payments. You can do a one-time $60 donation. And it would literally, it's the way we go down in the truth-telling industry of news is if we lose support financially, because we're doing this being constantly shut down by the big media and big influences. But so whatever you can spare. I mean, one of the things that's easy is just $5 a month. Just put it down $5 and then an automatic payment. And then you pay the 60 over 12 months. It's not a lot of money. But I understand if you can't, but I think it's getting now a time where we people like me need your help. And if you've been moved by this, please help me continue this work. It's never been more important than now, because the things I've been seeing and trying to make people aware of for 30 years are now happening. And it frightens most people away that just want to be lied to. And if you're not one of them, support me. And whatever you do, thank you for spending your time, which is also valuable, to these marathon shows that we do. Thank you. And I love you.
So again, please click the link in the description. It'll take you to his website, and you can sign up for the periodical and the readings. I've done a reading, and they're enjoyable. You'll learn a lot from it. And it's another means of helping John out. So
another
thank you.
means of me helping you,
That's true.
one-on-one.
So thank you again, John, for talking about the current events and everything that's going on in the world. Appreciate it. And we're going to be doing this again for this one is episode 16, and soon we'll be doing episode 17.
The great 17th.
Right. So just say goodbye to everybody before I stop the
goodbye
recording.
To everybody.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye. Hold on. Let me stop the recording here.